Hi, Shirley here, and today I'm going to do, I think it's going to be a short video, but who knows, just a quick introduction to what I see as sort of a model of the soul and soul progress. I am going to use some concepts from chaos, engineering, and spiritual stuff that we're all well acquainted with in this channel, I guess. So, model of the soul. We've all heard the paradigm that as souls we've been through it all, or we're going to go through it all, being our darkest of dark and the lightest of light. And then we also know that there are certain belief systems, for example, Vedic belief systems that deal with karma and saying that, oh, you got, okay, no study cases, you got this bad incident happening to you as a child because you did something horrible in past life, and so on and so forth. Which when people actually do past life regression, it's not necessarily the data that appears. Like sometimes one could have a trauma in this life, or could have a delay, especially a Saturnian delay of something, because they used to have a trauma around it, like a Saturn Venus appearing in the charts of people, hard Saturn Venus appearing in the charts of people who had gone through compromising sexual experiences like slavery, like sexual abuse. And then Saturn delays Venusian things in the lives of the native until the person heals and learns to embody themselves and their pleasure and their self-worth, recovering from these experiences. So what is a model of the soul, and how are we to interfere if we, let's say, give readings or healing to people? My belief is that the model of the soul is indeed that we go through a lot of trajectories and a lot of, light and dark and perpetrator and victim and whatnot. And it happens in a chaotic way. Now, what is a chaotic system? In the chaotic system, I'll do something really simple that does not, explain the whole of it. So it's going to be redundant for those of you who come from chaos theory. Please forgive me. Let's say I have a system and it has let's say this is my threshold. And I have a system that runs at about this circle, but it's not a linear circle. It's not a circle. It kind of changes its phases, but it touches this threshold and then it changes its phases, and it's not a complete circle. It's like there is some trajectory to the way that the movement happens, but it's not the exact replica, and it touches the threshold, going back, touches the threshold, reaching a momentum, and then at some certain stage the threshold is crossed and the system begins to move in this way. And then we will have, another momentum pulling it back. This is a system with, I think, 2 attractors. And so for the model of the soul, this is kind of like how the movement happens in between lives or throughout lives of the soul. That we have a chaotic movement and we're going to try many things, and we're going to breach boundaries. And I'm going to give an actual study case that relates to that maybe can exemplify the point. It's going to be shitfuck triggering, so be warned. And through this, in chaos theory, when we think about it philosophically, there is a huge debate of whether people want to calculate the direction of the chaotic system, because the whole magic is that it's chaotic. But let's say weather. When we want to know the weather is a chaotic system. Eventually, we do want to calculate something. And the way it's done is that, mathematicians take a tiny fraction of the system that is linear, and they computate it. So they look at the tiny fraction. And if we do that with the soul, when we look at the tiny fraction and it is linear, it is no longer chaotic and dynamic, it is linear, then we can see a trajectory. It is like the yang of the soul trajectory, because the chaos is yin. It has no order, right? It's random, it's moving around sporadically. But if we take the actual movement, and we take a small line, we take a yang part of this trajectory, and we can computate it, and then there is when we would see what seems like karma. There is where we would see actions and implications to these actions. So it is not completely true to say there is no such thing as karma, and it is not completely true to say, oh, life is all about karma. What you do, what you put out is what you receive. Yes and no. And in the life path of a person, you see that there are some steps, some mistakes, even in the reality creation and manifestation. I'm going to touch on co-creation. There are some mistakes that are fated. I think of it as the story of the biblical story about Moses, that he put his hand as a baby in the coal instead of the diamonds, and put the coal in his mouth, and so he had the speech impairment because of that. It was something that he did as a baby, and the story goes that it was the hand of God leading him to do that so that he would be saved. And I actually don't remember the whole biblical story. I'm not a religious person, but this is kind of like the analogy of how people sometimes make steps or mistakes that are fated because they are meant either to save them or to bring them into a new trajectory that their soul is heading towards. So it happened in both a deterministic and a random way at the same time. And there we have the point of interference, or the point of co-creation, because we're not just thrown here to flow. We are, in many cases, we are thrown here to flow, but we are also thrown here to alchemize, to go through processes, to act on inspiration. And this is like the breath of fresh air within the chaotic system, or within the karmatic path that we do have. And it is limited. And I have been doing my previous videos in the channel began with doing manifestation tips and tricks, because I saw that it works, and I was sort of testing the boundaries of what can I manifest, up to what can I manifest. And the more I learned about astrology, the more I realized the patterns within the co-creation abilities, like and how sometimes I would manifest things that would be considered a mistake, but there was a trajectory there. There was, let's say, a Pluto transit there. There was, let's say, a Saturn transit there. There was something that needed to, that the soul kind of needed to learn from. When we learn, linguistics or language development, we learn from error. We take, how do you study language development? You study the mistakes that children make when they try to speak the language. And by these mistakes, you learn how does the language develop. So learning is a really important method in research when we want to understand a phenomena. Also in neuroscience, we understand the function of the brain by people who have neurological disorders. That tells us what happens when this part is not functioning, what happens when this part is not activated, what happens when these two parts are activated together. The abnormalities. So learning and abnormalities are great resources to study from. And now, if I try to put it onto astrology, I'd say I'll give you the example of chaos and how when you cross a threshold, something changes, something shifts. So I ran into at least two women who had Pluto conjunct Venus. They were Scorpio Pluto. This is important. They were Scorpio Pluto and was conjuncting Venus. And both of them had an issue with the sexuality, that they were using the sexuality to kind of either please the other person or conquest the other person, but not attentive to what is pleasurable for them. So sexuality was not about them, it was about getting something from someone. And they went off and off and off. Of course, there was a reason they were prone to these behaviors. In both of them in other lives had severe horror sexual experiences, both as perpetrators and as victims. But at a certain point, they aligned themselves with someone so unaligned with their sexuality that that someone was breaking their sexual boundaries. And it happened when they finally managed to say no. They usually did not say no, and then when they finally expressed a no, that no was not respected. And instead of this issue of this no being not respected, leading to fearing to say no, leading to contraction, it was a threshold. And they crossed the threshold and they just began to express their boundaries, to honor their vulnerability, to get connected with their sexuality, with their pleasure. And they went through like a phenomenal change, where what they took from this is, oh, I went through this rape because I needed to set boundaries, which was the trajectory that was right for them. It's very triggering for someone who had gone through sexual violence or even hadn't. And here's this because we know very well that in many cases sexual violence happens when a person is feeling like liberated in the sexuality in some way. It's it's more than that. There is more complexity. It's like fractals, but I'm not going to get into it. Like you feel liberated, like you feel maybe innocent, and then something maybe at a young age comes and ravishes this, and then you begin to fear on sexuality, or you begin to use your sexuality in ways that are manipulative, or you begin to avoid sexuality altogether, and avoid saying no, and then try to heal from that. So you came with maybe a child who was expressive and respectful, and then that was ravished, and now the journey is how to get back to the body afterwards and how to re-express your boundaries without fear. But for them it was like, no, there was a lack of contact with the sexuality in a healthy way, and it was just getting worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And the incident of sexual violence kind of, when the sexual violence was not coming from within but from the other person, they breached it and they exploded outside of it, not in one day. But this is the kind of the journey of the soul, and how it is chaotic, how there are thresholds and crossing over, and how it is not predictable and it is not logical, of the way that we heal from trauma, or the way that we go through different experiences that sometimes make no sense, but they just happen. The second thing I wanted to say was about this co-creation point. The place in our chart where I identify the most that we co-create is Jupiter. It's that in-breath. It is... I recently began to see videos about astrology and the chakras, and it was very surprising to me they put Jupiter in the sex chakra. I know it is governing sperm creation in medical astrology, so that can make sense, and cohesion, but it was very surprising to me that they put it in the sex chakra. But the sex chakra is kind of a magnet. So that was interesting. I'm so used to Mars being governing the reproductive system, except for the womb that is the moon. So that was a new way of trying to figure out what's going on. But with Jupiter, you get this inner joy, and you get into the essence of the inner joy that is independent of something else. It is the life force. How is... What is, for example, sperm? It is life, and it's created within the body. It can be triggered, but no, it is not even triggered. It is just created within the body. If there is a partner, there isn't a partner. It's just created within, and it wants to, spread out. So the essence of Jupiter is similar. It is life, it's the childish curiosity, it's the philosopher, it's the person who looks at the world with the eyes of a child, that acts on inspiration. And that is the place of co-creation. When you think about all the methods of how to create your own reality, it's getting connected with this Jupiter energy. And this is why I think we don't have enough discussion of Jupiter in evolutionary astrology, because this is the part where we co-create, where we facilitate both that which is fated. You will create this with your Jupiter, and that which is expansive, and the expansiveness can also be fated, like luck and joy. They can also be fated. So it is both random and fated. Yeah, I think that's what I wanted to say, and what I do as a health practitioner, holistic health practitioner, and an astrologer, is I look for the point where we co-create, knowing that we co-create as far as our path allows, and we may do mistakes that lead us to the next trajectory, to the next experience that we are, that the soul is yearning to experience. It is sort of facilitating the path for Rahu. Okay, Rahu is the things that the soul has not experienced just yet in this life or in previous lives or in other lives. I like the word other lives rather than previous lives. If Ketu is what we need to learn from, assimilate, and let go of what no longer serves, and Pluto is like the whole trajectory of of lessons, of ups and downs and whatnot. I'm talking evolutionary now. Then Jupiter is that which facilitates. It's the the in-breath to the lungs, expanding the lungs, spreading the energy, creating life force, creating joy. And then we are aligned with that which is in the frequency of Jupiter, with the Venusian things in the frequency of Jupiter, right? Our partners are nourishing food, hopefully nourishing, our Venusian experiences, bodily experiences, and we align ourselves with attachment that are hopefully nourishing for our growth, as far as our path allows. And things can come more easily, stay more easily, and leave our life more easily. We align with trust in the universe. Jupiter is the bringer of children. And you have to remember that, because having a child, even if you're a child free, you need to the concept. Having a child is the greatest act of trust in the universe that there is. Okay, it's life that comes from inside of you, your partner, and it comes out to the world. You don't know what will it be like. You have no idea if you will like it or not. You have no idea what's going to happen. You have to take care of it for like the rest of your lives. It is the greatest act of trust in the world. It's even greater than the act of being born, because when you're being born, it's like it's about yourself, and when you bring in life, it's about somebody else. So it's kind of like trusting yourself that you will be able to take care of someone else. So Jupiter is essentially the place where we can trust the universe and feel supported and feel the divine cosmic order of things within chaos, and accept it, that have this inner anchoring within our path of alignment and alignment with what we see as God, or the inner God, or the self, and inspiration because of that. So that's my random course of thought. I just figured I didn't discuss my model of the soul with anyone in here on this channel, and it can be a missing link, because I sometimes speak about stuff that if you don't get that, you will not quite get what I'm talking about, or you will mistake me for things that I'm not, or for thinking or doing things that I'm not. So that one is important. Anyhow, I'll see you in my next video. I know I've put down certain videos that I think I need to redo, but I'll talk about them. If you have any questions as to the model of soul, if you have your own perspective, feel free to comment in the comments below. Do like this video if you like it, because it helps the algorithm and it helps more people discover what I do. I don't do videos just, you know, to please the audience. I do something that I'm really related to, that really express where I am at the given point, and it's wonderful to connect with people who are on that journey, and meet them where they are. So I'd love to hear from you, and if you have any more questions for me, requested videos, do ask. I consider these, and whatever I can reply, I do. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video. If you just bumped into this channel somehow and you want more of it, then you can subscribe, but it's not enough, because you won't get enough notifications. Only if you click the bell and you know, change it to receive all notifications. That's how YouTube works. It's kind of weird in this way, but that's how it works. So I'll see you in my next video, and have a beautiful evening. The war is over here in Israel. We had a ceasefire and there are no more rockets. Yeah, those were 11 days that there was no day and no night. Like, there were 11 days and I did not know. I thought it was like a week or so. It was more than that. And it was kind of frightening, because we'd never really had anything that intense, I think, in terms of, you know, both the streets and the rockets. But I don't know, we leave now. So no rockets, no sirens. We can take the time, and I can record a video without being afraid I'll have to go to the stairs in the middle of it. See ya.